Believers, we're going deep with Drew Baldridge today. This is going to be an incredible conversation. We're going to talk about who he was as a kid. At 18, he moves to Nashville. How does that play out? He gets here, gets a record deal. The record company folds. Now what does he do? Invest in himself all the way to a #1 song. And then how does Jesus play into his story? We're going to go deep. So I'm excited about this. We're going to have a great conversation. With me to help unpack,
G'day,
Shepherd.
mate. How are you, boss?
Mark Evans, and hey, welcome to Believers, Drew Baldridge.
Hey guys, this is awesome.
Good to see you, man.
Man, good to be seen.
I have so much that I want us to make sure that we get to and talk about. But let me just go back because we've known each other for a long time, but I have no idea what your childhood was like. So
Yeah.
go back to shout out your hometown. What
yeah,
kind of kid were
totally.
you? What was your home life like?
So we grew up in a town called Patoka, Illinois, which is a town of 500 and some people, and grew up a lot in church. You know, that's where I first started singing. It's where I first started playing music. You know, interesting enough, I grew up Pentecost actually. So my grandma and grandpa were Pentecostal. We went to church there probably till I was about 10 or 11, then switched over to a small church in Patoka, you know, which was like 40 or 50 farmers, you know, every Sunday, and just pretty much praying for rain every day, you know. And you know, the teenage years, I led worship sometimes, you know, and it was so small that you almost didn't even need, you know, any sound equipment. It's just like jump up there and sing a guitar or play guitar and sing real loud.
So were you like born again, one of those kids, or did you drift away at some point? When did Jesus become like, all right, I'm serious about this?
Yeah, no, it was kind of just my whole life. You know, I was my parents were very involved in church. My dad's a deacon at the church. I remember, you know, being young and riding back roads with my friends, you know, and everybody getting wild and crazy and like, oh, we got Preacher Baldridge in the back here telling us how to live our lives.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'd be like, oh man, I'm not trying to. I'm just saying, well, let's watch what we're doing.
Yeah.
I was always one of those kids. Everybody was like, you're goody two shoes or whatever. But it was just, God was just always, I don't know. I just always felt like I loved Jesus, and I loved what it was, and I loved the word of it. And I just tried to live my best life and best life for Jesus. And I remember a big moment when I was 16, man, thinking back on the music journey of what that was like. And 17 rolled around. I was actually in a quartet with my dad, and I was singing bass in a small church quartet. But on Friday and Saturday nights, I was playing in bars because I was 17. I was starting country music.
Okay.
I just started playing my guitar. And I just remember, like, you know, a couple of guys in that quartet being a real thing, coming up and just being like, hey, man, like, you need to make a decision if you're going to sing for God or if you're going to sing in bars. And that, man, that about wrecked me. That was one of the biggest moments I felt like in music up to that moment in my life of, what do I do? Am I really a bad person because I sing country music? Do I view myself wrong? Like, I'm trying to live in light and do all these things, but I love country music. It's my soul. It's my heart. I grew up on a farm. I love this life. And I remember a couple of, I don't know if it was weeks or days, I go in and my childhood preacher, Preacher John was actually his name. And after church one day, he said, hey, come back to my office. And I went back to his office, and he's like, look, I know what's going on. And I didn't know. And I was like sitting there, you know, here I am, like junior in high school, like freaking out. Like,
wait, what do you mean?
What's going on? What am I doing?
Yeah.
And him just saying, all I'm going to say to all this is Jesus just wasn't in the church.
Yeah, come on.
And that still today just wrecks me. You know, he was like, hey, be a light wherever you are. If that's in a bar, if that's, you know, wherever you go, be a light. Jesus was with the taxpayers, you know. He was, and that time that was like the bars, whatever it is, you know. And I'm not saying bars are bad, even, you know, like go and enjoy your life. But I'm just saying, like, he said, Jesus is everywhere. Go be a light. Go do that. And that changed my view of my creativity drastically, because I was like, I'm moving to Nashville. That's the light. That's where I want to go. I can reach more people. I can do all this.
And that, honestly, bro, is so encouraging to hear, because the whole, like, this issue of church, world, it literally in Matthew 5 is like, do not put your light under a bowl.
Yeah,
like,
that's amazing.
And the whole Christian, even just like, oh no, I'm only Christian music industry. Like I'm not a Christian and country and that wrestle. It's like, no, man, I believe like even some of the music industry bubbles are bolts that lights go, I'm going to stay under that and in that lane. And I just love what God's doing in the country space because it's the lampstand. It's that city on a hill. It's that, man, that's where God's called us to be, is on the lampstand.
Yeah, and it's just about love, man, and loving people and being
right.
a light. You know, I'm a let my light shine. You know, go back to that little song.
Absolutely.
We
Let
used to
my
sing this.
little light shine.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
little light of
exactly,
mine.
You know,
Yeah.
this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine.
So I think too, if you're watching, like whatever your profession is, whatever you do, like that's your mission field. And when you think about, like you see a lot of professional athletes or even college athletes that are on the podium and they're professing Jesus. How did that happen? Likely it was another athlete or it was a coach. If you're in radio, if you're in music, songwriting, if you're an artist, the odds are you're going to reach whoever you're doing life with. If you're a factory worker, you're going to be able to share the gospel of Jesus with whoever is assembling on that same line with you, right? I think we depend too much on the church to go out, oh, they'll get them. Nah, totally. That's what we're called to do no matter what we do.
Totally. And question for you, just in that, have you in this recent kind of journey felt the pressure in that country world stepping in to kind of turn down the message just a little bit? Has there been any like kind of tension around that?
Man, I felt like there was a lot more in the beginning for me. You know, I think coming in, young kid, trying to figure out who I'm going to be, what I want to say, and being too, like, I remember people like, well, you can't talk too much about it, you know, like, you're also country music. So riding that line, I think there is a real thing because, you know, when a song comes on, you don't want to preach, beat them over the head. You know, we're not in Christian music. We're not, this ain't praise and worship. But, you know, I think to me, some of the best messages of getting God across and the light across is country music talking about God. And I think of songs about I Believe by Brooks and Dunn. You know, I think of, that's what I love about Sunday. You know, I think of songs, those are the songs that resonate with my little country boy heart. You know, when I was young and I was writing, I was like, man, you know, you can't tell me this whole, you know, life ends in a hearse. Like that verse, like, man, come on, give it to me. You know, that preached to me more than praise and worship music did. It was real. I think that's what's so great about country music. There's this realness involved with real life situations. Here we are in the world. It's not so much hallelujah, praise Jesus all the time. It's like, no, there's struggles, there's hardship, but there's also overcoming to know that there is something beyond.
It's literally what Jesus did. Like if you think about it, the parables, country music are modern parables. Yeah. Like those stories and, you know, the songs you mentioned is literally modern parables. I think too many times as believers, we just say what Jesus said versus doing what he did, which is the kingdom of heaven is like this, and presented this agricultural based mostly kind of stories that unpack the kingdom of heaven. I think
of this old song. What is it? Was it Clay Walker that sang Jesus Was a Country Boy? Have you ever heard this song?
I think so.
You ought to just, if listeners out there, look up Jesus Was a Country Boy. Talks about walking on dirt roads on his bare feet. It's pretty good. It makes me think. I just remember hearing that song, and be like, yeah, Jesus was a country boy. You know,
that's
like
right.
he, in my view, he is.
Absolutely.
Well, I think the reason we're talking to Drew is he's a modern day Bible story. I think these Bible characters, these flawed people that we read about are still happening today. So you're in this small town, you've been singing in church, you decide, all right, I'm going to, you're faced with that conflict of, do I sing with Dad's quartet? Do I pursue country music and sing in bars? Where did you get to that resolution, and why Nashville, you're taking a shot?
Yeah, so I remember packing up everything and my parents driving me here with an old trailer, and I had a couch, a TV, and a bed in it. They dropped me off. I lived at the Gazebo apartment here in Nashville. I'm sure there's some songwriters out there that live there. Yeah. And I remember them taking me up there, dropping me off, and they had to go back home, like work the next day or whatever. I remember just sitting up there, you know, and just crying, being like, what did I just do? Because I'm coming from a town of 550 into this city where it's huge. You know, we didn't have red lights. We didn't know, I don't even know how to drive here really, you know, and just thinking like, okay, well, what am I doing? What's my plan? What's my plan of attack? How am I going to be discovered or start networking and all those things. And, you know, this whole time I was still going back home every weekend and playing in my little hometown area, little dive bars, and started playing at Tootsie's here and Rippy's and downtown bars, but also at that whole time going out to writers' nights and meeting friends, you know, and really any writers' night I'd go to, I had little cards made, and I would just, if I loved somebody's music, I'd just go up and say, hey, you're awesome. Here's my card. I think we should write together. And just started trying to create a little group of friends, of people that I believed in. And still today, some of those people are great friends.
Let's talk about that, because I think that is a key thing, especially, you know, in the songwriting world. But if you're pursuing any aspect of the music industry, you have to move to where Music City is. You have to go to Nashville, and you get here much like an 18-year-old kid who knows nobody. How do you start making those connections? How do you find your people? And then how do you discern between who to embrace and who to give the Heisman to, because they're not equally yoked? We talk about that a lot.
Yeah, that's hard. That's really hard. And I bet a lot of songwriters out here that are listening to this podcast, they're going through that right now, because, you know, it's interesting because there's some people from back in those days that are still in this town that we just didn't see eye to eye. You know, like we weren't on the same path or the same journey. We're still, I know them, I still want to love them, you know, but we just viewed things differently. And the way that I always, you know, really wanted to start friendships with people is because I thought they were mega talented. That was, I would go to writers' rounds. Like there used to be a great one at Douglas Corner when that was a thing. And I don't know if the Commodore or Hotel Indigo is still a thing. I don't even know where writers' nights are anymore, or even if they do those as much anymore. I know they do them like on Tin Roof and some things like that. But I would go and I would just sit and watch. I wouldn't even get to play, and I would just hear somebody and just be like, wow, they're awesome. Like Lainey Wilson. Like, wow, I remember the first time hearing her and just being like, wow, you're great. Like, I think we should be friends. Like, here, let's write songs together and start that relationship. Luke Combs, kind of the same thing. I remember walking down and him playing at Winners, me and Lainey. She's like, hey, I got this friend. We should go watch him. And hearing Luke Combs from outside and being like, wow, this voice is incredible. And walking and sitting in, no, it was Winners. And he was just me and Lainey and like three dudes at the bar watching Luke play and being like, this dude's awesome. Like, we should write songs together, you know, and just kind of started my relationships off people I thought were great artists. And then, you know, you got to have a bond, a relationship. And if you vibe and you like each other, you know, it grows. And there's some people that you grow with, some people that you grow away from, you know. And so I do think this business is such a relationship business, and you create lifelong friendships, or you just create also just like, hey, you remember when I was back there, we were doing the same thing, you know, and you grow. You watch friends grow. I have so many friends that I remember from years ago that are doing amazing things now, and it's so awesome. But today's age of TikTok and Facebook and Reels and all that stuff, it kind of take away from that, because a lot of people just get discovered and then they're off to the races, and it's awesome. That's an amazing thing we didn't have 10 years ago. Okay. But looking back, I think they miss out on that relationship of like growing from 0 to 10 years into this town with somebody.
And you mentioned Lainey. Lainey is a strong believer. So as you're finding people, you know, you'll find people of like faith. You'll find people that are atheists. You'll find people that are all your friends. How is the bond different when you connect with someone that you share faith with? Is it different?
Yeah, it is. You know, there's you feel champion different of, hey, I'm praying for you. You know, there's a lot of that of, you know, the I love you to hit a little harder. You know, it's a little, there's a little more bond. And, you know, I have great friends that are non-believers too. But when I'm going through a dark time and I get a text message from a friend said, hey, I prayed for you tonight, that is, that's a little deeper love for me, you know, of somebody that's thinking and going around them and just saying, hey, I'm thinking of you, but not just thinking of you. I'm also asking the Lord and, you know, to also care for you. And when somebody does that for me, that goes, there's something special about that, you know. And I've had friends, even this morning I had a Joe Jamie, who's amazing.
I know, my sister.
Yeah, she's awesome. And, you know, that's the label that I'm working with now. And she's just like, hey, friend, what can I pray for you about? And it about brings tears to my eyes. And I look at my wife and I'm like, hey, somebody that's running my record label sends me a message and says, what can I pray for you about? And I didn't have to say anything about music. I'm like, pray for my son's starting daycare. This is really hard on my wife right now. You know, like, can you pray for that for me? And what can I pray for you about? I don't know. I don't know how to explain it.
It's like a deeper level of trust and intimacy that, you know, you share the same faith. All right. So you're in town as an 18-year-old kid, you make some connections. You finally it's a 10-year town, right? So was it 10 years until you got your record deal with Cold River?
When we got here, things moved really fast for me. I was very blessed. You know, I remember friends at that time that were like, how are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know, this is exciting. You know, we get a publishing deal 2 years in, 2.5 years in. I signed with Rusty Gaston, who's still my publisher today.
Yeah, good dude.
He's been with me since day one. We signed with Rusty. All of a sudden, I'm with William Morris. All of a sudden, I'm getting a record deal at Cold River. And this is 4 years in, I get a record deal with Cold River.
Show off.
And yeah, I mean, but look, that was so exciting. But then it was like, I released 4 singles in 4 years and all of them die before they get to the 40s. And here it is, 2019. I take a hiatus from radio and they really want me to focus on writing. I write some of my best music that I think is my best. And I go in and I record it. We decide to send a song to radio and the label folds. And I remember Pete, the guy that ran my label, pulled me aside. He's like, hey, you know, I just want to give you a heads up. Like, we're not going to be a label anymore. And I was like, okay. And then there was part of me is down. Part of me excited. Like, we're going to jump right into another record label, another record deal. And then 2020 comes and COVID hits and nobody takes meetings. And really, I find out nobody really wants me. You know, this is a guy that has lost 4 singles at radio. You know, why would I bet on this guy when I have these TikTok artists that are doing mega numbers, that are coming in, that are shiny, they're new, it's new to radio, it's new to our Nashville system, and people can get excited about that. This old guy, you know, that's still here, that's, you know, just the roach, not going away anywhere. Here he is. Why would we want to jump in, you know, jump and do that?
It's a tough place to be. So when you're in that, where are you emotionally?
Correct.
And how do you navigate that?
Yeah, there's for artists out there, there's a really awesome place called Porter's Call. And Chad over at Porter's Call was amazing to me. And, you know, here it is, 2020. I find out through another artist friend about them. Me and my wife are we're engaged, so we're going and visiting him. And, you know, he's like, hey, I think you need to come to like this small group. He has a small group of artists that get together that have all went through what I'm going through, and we sit down and we talk, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not the only artist going through this. I feel like sometimes as artists, we're out on an island, we feel like, because a lot of people that we hang out with are our band members or they're publishers, because we're out doing our own business. Yeah, we're friends with other artists, but we don't ever open our hearts. You know, we're dudes, we're tough. It's like, how are you? Great. You know, you're on the surface. But going in here and meeting with them, being like, dude, I'm wrecked. This is what's going on. And they're like, I went through that. Let me tell you what I did. And you're like, you went through this? I'm not the only person going through this. And I think talking to other artists about what you're going through makes you feel less alone.
Exactly that. It's that peer-to-peer ministry
Yeah.
of knowing that this person who's speaking into your life is speaking into your life because they've lived what you're living right now.
Yeah,
And you trust what they're saying.
And I didn't think of that. You know, I just thought, I'm alone. I got to go through this alone. I got to figure this out. I moved here to Nashville alone. This is my dream alone. This is my music alone. Instead of just being like, obviously you're praying about and all this stuff, but sometimes community, man, is not talked about enough in our city like it should be.
I agree. And I think that's why it's so important, as we've been talking about, to find your people. And at Porter's Call, you know, you had those friendships, and I love just hearing how intentional you were, you know, going to writers and it's not networking, your language, everything you're saying. It's like, I was looking for like real friendships, you know, and going to Porter's Call, the pack that was that small group, you know, that as you allowed yourself to be vulnerable, open up and share and just be real, and experiencing that attunement, you know, of like, hey, me too.
That's so important.
So important.
And that's what I love about this Believers that y'all are doing. You know, I remember sitting at a table with you with 4 people in a room at the back of Kitchen Notes. And, you know, a couple artists and talking about our struggles in our life, and we could share that just for one day at CRS for a year. And you'd be like, oh my goodness, so-and-so's going through this too. Like, you know, they're struggling. They lost their deal, or their single didn't work, or you're thinking all the time. I remember thinking, I'm the only one with these problems. I'm the only one going through this. And it's not the case. Even when people with multiple hits and doing as big as you, there's problems there too with something different. And so grass is not always greener, but surrounding yourself with people that do actually love you and care for you and are praying for you was something that really helped me along the path.
Yeah, finding your community, finding your people is key. And I just want to, you know, if you've heard Drew talk about Porter's Call is one of our friends. And if you want to find out more about Porter's Call, you can go to thebelievers.life, and in the resources section, you can find out how you can get connected to Porter's Call.
I didn't even know that. They're incredible.
Yeah.
I tell every artist, even like, you know, marriage counseling and enough, like me and my wife, you know, they only focus on artists or, you know, musicians that are going through this, because it's a real kind of niche thing, dealing with a guy gone or a wife being gone out on the road and being a parent and all that stuff. We're navigating that all the time, but it's like having somebody to talk to about that gets it. Yeah, check out Porter's Call for everybody out there.
I have these types of conversations because the church can't always touch on what it's like to be a touring artist or a songwriter or radio, and you're worried about your next job or career, right? It's tough. So, Cold River, record deal's done. You're going through this difficult time. You found some community in Porter's Call and faith in other artists. At what point does God show up, or you decide you're taking a shot?
Me and my wife get married 2021. I'm putting out songs independently. And back on my old record deal in 2019, I had this song called She's Somebody's Daughter that I always thought was awesome. But looking back in 2019, I recorded it. And I remember after singing my vocal on it in 2019, I went and sit in the car and I pulled up Country Air Check. And at the top, it said, going for ads to Neil Towns, Somebody's Daughter. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is my favorite song, and there's a freaking another song coming out with the same title. Well, I can't send this to radio. And I remember calling my team. They're like, we'll just send one of the other ones. No big deal. And it's like, you know, in that moment, looking back now, that was such a God thing for me that we didn't go. And Tennille's song's great, you know, and it just happened to be that it's the same title. They're different completely songs. But it was just so wild looking back of like, man, if we would have sent that to radio, the label closed in 3 months. Like we had another song we went with and it closed in 3 months, and it probably wouldn't have had this chance. But I just remember like me and my wife getting married. That was always her favorite song. I made a special version for her, just on a piano. A guy named Gordon Moat, who's an amazing keyboard player, piano player, everything. And we made this version, me, him, and a cello, and really quick, just so she could dance to it with her dad at our wedding. And I remember just thinking, okay, like if we put this out, great. Like maybe we'll just put together the video is going to be our wedding. Like, let's just we're already getting a wedding. I can't afford a ton of stuff. We're just going to make it our wedding video, you know, and I'll throw in some home video. I remember grabbing her home videos and I was like, okay, we're going to put this together. And I remember we were on our honeymoon, and it was a Wednesday night on our honeymoon. We were in Hawaii, and we were going down to the part of the island where they do like shaved ice, and she wanted shaved ice, and we had this rental car that was like $1 million. I remember it was so expensive to get that rental car for one day. I remember it being so hard. And she was like, hey, I'm going to wait in this line for shaved ice. I was like, hey, while you're waiting in line, I'm going to go make a TikTok. And it was almost divorce right then. No, just kidding. She was like, oh, you're going to work while we're on our honeymoon? Yeah, exactly. So I go and I make this TikTok, and I think I said, hey, guys, like, you know, if you like it, I'll put it out on Friday, just hoping and praying people would like it. And I woke up Thursday, me and my wife did, and it had almost 10 million views on it. And we were blown away. You know, we were like, wow. I thought, man, we're back, baby. Like, we're going to get a record deal. Like, people are going to see this. They're going to be excited. Because around that time, 2021, that's when all the deals started coming from TikTok was really letting songs go and blow up. And we came home, and I remember coming home from that, and the song came out Friday. And I remember we were trending on Shazam in South Africa. We were number 8 in Norway on Spotify, number 7 in Sweden. It was just like this kaboom thing. And I decided to do this tour where I just played people's backyards, where I posted on social media. It said, I'll play anybody's backyard. I'm broke. Like, I have no other way to make money. Please let me play your backyard. And I remember landing from my honeymoon, my tour manager picking me up. I got my wife an Uber home, and we went and played 20 backyards in 19 days. Just in our van, he picked me up. We went from Nashville to Ohio up to the Northeast, all the way around. And we even did like 2 shows in one day in one town, like 20 backyards in 19 days. And this whole time, Daughter just started going viral on TikTok. And everybody's like, what are you doing? I was like, nothing. It's just, they started this trend where girls would act out the verses and all the choruses were them growing up with their dad. And it just wrecked me. Like, I was tearing up, and it really changed how I thought of music and what I was doing. Because that for so long, that whole time, up until that moment, I was making music for Nashville. I was making music for radio.
Other people speaking in who you should be, how you should act, what songs you should record.
What you should record, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was always like, well, radio ain't going to play that. Why am I going to write that? Why? It's got to be fast. It's got to be tempo. And it's like, no, it's got to be freaking real. It's got to be for real life people, real life people's hearts, real life people's souls. Like, I watched it in real time connect with people. And that is what I was like, I'm done. I'm done with chasing something. If this other thing wants to come, it will. But I'm only writing and putting out songs that move me emotionally. And I'm chasing that. I'm chasing what this is doing. I want to be a light. I want to help people. I want my music to mean something, to people do life to it. And so I was watching it in real time react, and I had a couple small, little label things call, and nothing ever seemed to work out. And finally, it got to the point. This is 2023, so 2 years later. I go get out of backyards, and I play my first fair back. That I texted a buddy and was like, "Hey, can I play a couple shows for you?" He's a promoter. He's like, "Sure, man." So I go play it, and I play Daughter, and everybody's singing it. And I look at my bass player who's been with me for 11 years, and I was like, "Man, does that feel different to you?" I was like, "Yeah, nobody's ever sang any of our songs." I was like, "Yeah, nobody has ever." And so that was the moment that was like, okay, well, what can we do? Like, I go back and I'm at this old studio called Omni that's here in Nashville, and one of my longtime radio buddies named Tim Richards was in there, and he had a guy, he was helping out in Phoenix area. He wanted me to write with, and I was writing with him. I was sitting in the studio. The guy was recording the song, and I said, "Tim," he's like, "Tell me about what's going on." I was like, "Man, I got this song, and I believe in it, and I can't get a record deal on it." He's like, "Why do you need a record deal?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Just hire a team. Go after it." I was like, "That sounds crazy." And he was like, "I know." He's like, "But I'll be there with you. Like, we can talk about it and discuss it." And I was like, "Okay." So then I remember calling just the heads of radio, people that I trusted. I called you, and I was like,
and I said, "He's insane."
Yeah, he did. I was like, "What do you think of this?" He's like, "It's really hard," But everybody, what I loved about it, and I talked about this when we had our Believers thing, is it kept coming back to, we love the song. It's going to be hard. It's going to be impossible.
Yeah.
But there's something about that song. It's resonating. We see it. It's got streams, all the things. And here I was sitting and was like, okay, I moved here 12 years ago to be on the radio. I have a song that I'm seeing reacting. Why am I just going to give up on it? And everybody around me was like, "Dude, this song's 4 years old. Like, give it up, hang it up." And I was like, man, but every post I post gets 1 million views with it. I don't know why, but every time I post it, it gets 1 million views. It's doing something. And so I got to the point where I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to freaking do it. I'm going to hire a staff. And I called radio, and they helped me. Hey, I like this person. I like that one. So I created this awesome team, and everybody said I was crazy, and I thought I was crazy too. But it was my dream. I didn't want to look back in 30 years and say, why did I not try with a song that has this powerful of a message about treating women right? And I know it's going to be really different for radio, and it's kind of a ballad, but it's like, hey, just play it and see if people like it. Test it. I bet it tests really well, and that's kind of what I based it off of, and God blessed us.
He did that. And it's historic too. I mean, that's what, when you have something that has a message that moves people,
Yeah.
right, that God can anoint and lift up. And that's essentially what he did with this song. He says, if you lift me up, I'll draw them into you. He lifted up this song and he drew a
and
lot
it's
of
so
people
funny,
to it.
like, it's a song that's not supposed to work.
No, I
You
mean,
know, like-
out for that long, that old of a song.
Yeah.
It's a ballad. You're hiring your own radio team to bring this out to the world. Like, there's only one other artist who's ever accomplished that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Garth Brooks, and he cheated because he was already Garth Brooks when he did it.
Yeah, and everybody's like, "What's your goal?" And I was like, "Man, just get many people to hear this as possible, because I just know that people need this song."
Sure.
And you know, you think, like you said, it's a ballad. You're hiring your own staff. Everybody's like, it's my own money. You know, like, I'm funding this. I'm paying. I have 4 or 5 people on retainer monthly that all I could do is pray. And I remember just so many nights being up at 3 a.m. because I remember going to my wife and saying, I'm going to do this. And I just think it's important for everybody out there to have a spouse that walks the faith with you. And it almost brings me to tears, because she believed in me more than I believed in myself. And that was so hard. I remember going to her and just saying, like, man, the first time we've made money off streaming, and I'm going to take the chance to go to radio with this, because this is selfishly my dream. And we have a son that's not even 1, and you know, he was sleeping, and I would just go and stare at him and be like, what am I doing? I just spent enough money this month to put him a year in college, you know. And I remember when we finally took it to #1 and sitting outside with my wife and just saying, did you really think like this could happen? You know, did you really believe that? And she goes, I know what it is. I just trusted you. And she goes, but I remember her when I first did this, she goes, yes, we can send it, but don't tell me how much money we're spending. I don't want to know. I just want you to go and get whatever you got to do to pull it off. You do it, but don't tell me what's going on in the back.
That's what I say every time my wife goes to Target.
Yeah, me too. That's what I say too. Yeah.
I love it, man. I really am just moved by I think so often in this space, the temptation is to have 10 irons in the fire. To have like, oh, man, I got to have this and this and this, and one of them's going to work. But just to see your just commitment and that thing inside of you. And that's my question is, to what level did you feel like it was coincidental? It was like, where did that confidence, and you may like not have a clear answer on that, but where did that confidence come from?
Well, I remember
pursuing this.
You know, some of the people on my team, you know, every week, for everybody out there, I mean, I'm sure a lot of music industry listens to this. Ads are Monday, and which means stations can open up to add your song that day. And so every, you know, record rep in Nashville is beating up Gator Harrison every Monday. Add my song, you know, help me out. And so I just remember just hoping to get it at one station every week was my goal. And just to be on the board, because it'll pop up your name. Oh, wow, Drew got another ad. He's still going. Yeah. After 7 months of not charting, this guy is still somehow in the game. But I remember Uncle Lou, we call him, Louie Newman, who's on my team, who kind of runs my staff. And we're like family now. And we weren't supposed to get an ad, and it would just happen. Or, you know, this chain wasn't supposed to come in, but they just did. And I remember just thinking, like, through the whole process of like, this is going to work. There's something telling me, don't give up. I don't know what it is. Don't give up. Somebody needs this song. Somebody needs this message. Don't give up. And I remember him saying one day, and, you know, we didn't really talk a whole lot about faith, but I would always just say, this is God. This is God. And I remember finally one time, he finally said, I don't know how this is working. You know, he was like, this has to be divine intervention. Like something else is touching this is working, because you put all those odds against it. This is not supposed to happen.
It's not supposed to work.
It's not supposed to work.
Yeah.
Well, the Bible says, ascribe the glory due his name. And I'm a believer that God actually wants the credit.
Yeah.
And I think, just like you said, this is God. Giving him that credit so that people know. God wants to bless things so that people know that he's a good father.
Oh, that's awesome.
And if he gets the credit, man, I'm a huge believer in like that's such a key to unlocking doors, is like, well, how did this happen? And that's why I asked the question, is like, how much do you attribute coincidence, TikTok virality, or God? And the fact that the whole journey, as you're chasing and pursuing this one iron in the fire, this is God. It can only be God. There's no other reason.
Yeah, and it was so cool to look around like Rusty and like all of my people on my team was like, it's not supposed to work. It's a God thing. You know, everybody kept saying that. I was like, this is, you know, this is happening. I remember too, like every second it was like, we get top 40. Rusty's like, you're going to get a label. And like, no label. Where the labels at? We'd get top 30. Label's going to come in. Where they at, bro? And then time we got top 20, it was like, we're just going to freaking do it.
Exactly.
You know, we're going to take
the labels can wait. They can line up.
They can wait, baby.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
going to try to do this ourselves. And but like I said, it was just such a journey and a blessed journey. And I think the whole time I thought this was going to be such a selfish thing. And I think I talked to y'all about that too, of just when it happened, when we got top 5 and I found out that this has never been done for an artist's first #1, and I didn't even know that. I was just trying to just do the thing. You know, like you said, just head down, focus, just trying to do it. And then the amount of artists that have been through what I've been through are reaching out and saying, hey man, let's get on a call. Hey man, this is so awesome. Independent artist doing this. It just showed that the machine, yes, the machine matters, but at the end of the day, it's a song. The power of a message, the power of a song still runs this town. It's not, you know, the head at whatever record label. It's not that. It's not the head of whatever radio conglomerate. It's not that. It's the power of a song and the people you're touching. And a good song is always going to find the way. And I think so many independent artists reached out and were like, hey man, we were going to give up. Like, we're done, but we saw your story and we're going to keep going.
I want to. So obviously she's somebody's daughter. Now tough people.
Oh man.
Now you're having a string of hits. Now be careful, son. Now you're on these major tours. Now you're doing all the interviews. So now you've reached this certain level of fame, which now it can be dangerous on the other side.
Yeah.
Right. How do you balance this newfound fame after so many years of grinding, but also Lyric, your son, your wife, this career? How do you balance faith and fame effectively?
Something we're still struggling through, you know, just being honest here. Absolutely. I found out that the farther your success can go in music, sometimes the teeter-totter can go this way with your family. And you got to get that back. And over the break, I felt like I really just having time. I was doing every radio show in America, man. I was gone for almost, you know, every week, gone for 5 days trying to get this song. But she was supportive, but it was hard. You know, it was hard, and being gone and trying to get this off the ground, and her, you know, my wife being like, hey, we're here still. You know, like, be a dad. Like, you gotta. It's not all about music, and it's like having her keep me in check in such a healthy way is what I needed, you know, and now I feel like I'm starting to come back. And there's also when you're in this rush mode of I got to get it, I got to get a hit. Then you get that and you're like, man, that's amazing and that's awesome. But also like, I don't got to get it. You know, like, yes, I want to have success, but also I want to have success at being a dad. I watched my son like spend a full day in daycare today. And they send pictures and stuff, and they sent a picture of him actually sleeping in the daycare, and he was on his little night knapsack or whatever. And me and my wife, I remember we sent the picture to each other, and we were like broken. You know, it was like, man, I missed a lot of that until he's in daycare, you know, because I was on the road. And so the balance is still trying to be found. And I think in my head, as long as I'm thinking about that, like how hard it is to balance it, that it's healthy. That if I'm remembering I got to balance this music stuff can be got to get it. But like, I really got to be a dad.
Well, and I want to talk about, because there's lots of different roles that you're playing now. You're artist, you're leading your own company, you've got your own record company, you're a husband, you're a father, but you're also a son of the Most High God. What spiritual disciplines do you have in place to help keep you spiritually centered in a fight or flight grind that is the career choice?
Yeah, I have some great people out there that every morning send me Bible verses, that every morning send me devotions that I read through. And I have a group of 4 guys that every morning I send Bible verses to, and wake up in the morning, start my day with a little bit of word, and I'm not the greatest at that. I will be, but at least one verse or one devotion every day to get the day started is really a big thing. And, I think in our world, there's a lot of temptations of being on the road life and the glories of what people think that looks like. Just remove those. Like, no girls backstage. We're not in a bus yet, but no girls are going to be on our bus. This life is already way too hard to throw that mess in. I don't really drink that much. I'm not out trying to get hammered before I take stage. There's this journey that we're on is already too hard. So I'm trying to remove the temptation to want to do anything. And it's hard, temptation's tough. It's all around you. And so trying to walk that line of just remove that, don't put yourself in those positions, is something that I really stand by. And my guys in my band know that, and being forefront about that, of like, hey, we're all in check here. You check me, I check you. And having people in my band that know that we are Christians in this band together, and we walk this faith. You keep me in check, I keep you in check, and really having somebody out on the road that can keep you in checks and balances.
That iron sharpening iron.
It's a huge thing. And I think one thing I always say is we're all going to stumble.
Yeah.
We've all
100%.
fallen short of the glory of God. Where you choose to be as far as how close you are to the line, if you stumble and you're like, man, I'm going to see how close to the line I can get. You stumble, guess what?
That's real.
You fall over the line, And so I
real.
think I just love hearing, I think that's such a good example for anyone listening, to be intentional about where are you trying to be in the line? How much you're doing? Like, well, it's not really quite, but then as soon as we have that stumble, it's like, you make those mistakes, you live with those scars.
And we've had those, hiccups all the time, and you learn from those mistakes and try to move on from it. And, like you said, now it's really still, you feel like you're in it, trying to get it and things. And, but it's just a different trying to get after it. And like you said, tough people, it's our second, top 20. And now I'm already feeling pressure of what's next, and that's this town. It's like, what's next? What's the next song? What's the next single? What's the record? What's the, who are out on tour in 2026? I'm like, oh my gosh, we're talking 2026. We got in 2025. Right. So it's just like, it's constant that rush, but trying to stay grounded where you're at.
And putting it in perspective, I think we all have those check mark reminders. Maybe it's Bible verses that go to. I always go to, faithful is he who calls you, who will also do it. He's called you to be in this moment, but he's also promised that he's going to fulfill this moment and help you through whatever that is.
That's awesome.
And so it's always trying to remind yourself of that the pressure's not really on us.
Yeah.
It's on him. And all our pressure is just to say yes and to be faithful and to be in tune with the Holy Spirit so that we hear when he speaks, we step in that direction, right?
Yeah, and I always go back to Jeremiah 29:11. That's one of my favorites. Plans to prosper you, and it's not to harm you, and that is something, to have a God that knows that there's a plan for your life. You can kind of just not coast, but you're like, hey, I'm going to be all right. If I don't have 5 number ones, 10 number ones, and I think in the last year, just really realizing that, like, 1 number one was a dream and it's awesome. And yes, I want to get as many as possible. But at the end of the day, if my music can just make an impact, I tried to take out writing number 1 hits and just writing songs that the world needs, hopefully, and the world can make the world better, be a light, all those things, and just put it out in the world and hope it does what it's supposed to do.
That's the way to live, man, is not this destination mentality of number one, two number ones, three number ones, but direction. You know, everything in the Bible is, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. It's not just about, you know, about a goal, even though it's good to have goals. I think so many of us, like me too, I look at it, go, when am I going to be happy? When I hit this destination? It's just a false narrative. It's like, I'm going to be happy when I lock into the direction that I was made for. And, you know, he knows the way I take. And so I think it's all direction orientated. And last thing, I think, as we kind of wrap up, I think Believers CRS is going to be awesome with Find Your People as the theme. Just hearing some of your story of how you were really intentional about that is amazing. Those people that are listening that are in that place of where they have a dream and they're trying to steward it well, your story is super encouraging, I think, to a lot of people, as you've seen them reaching out saying, hey, how did you steward that well? You obviously did. How did, you know, with your marriage, with even just your mental health, with that whole journey of the people you put around you, what would you say to those listening as an encouragement to steward their dream well?
Yeah, you know, I kind of, and this sounds, I know, silly, but the hook of Tough People, the song, was really what I leaned on. You know, that says hard work pays off, good beats evil, tough times make tough people. And I think for me in that moment was work hard. Work as hard as you can. For me, I know I'm not the most talented. I'm not singing Chris Stapleton. Like, there's no way. You know what I mean? Like, the dude can sing.
Yeah.
I'm not singing with Shay Mooney. You know, like, I know that for a fact. And so I know I just got to work harder. Everybody's got a strength as an artist. Some people's strengths are great singers. Some people's strengths are great songwriters. Some people's strengths are connecting with people. And I think find your strength as an artist, or find your strength as a radio personality, find your strength as a songwriter, and chase that. And those are your God gifts. That's your strength. That's what people, don't try to be something else. But what I noticed in this whole journey, and me and my wife talk about it the most, is the amount of people that reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to be there for you because you were good to me. And I think along this path, I didn't realize I was just trying to be nice and do unto others as you want to be treated. But how much that came back on this whole journey. Radio friends hit me up, was like, hey man, you came out here and you didn't have to, and you played this show for me. We're adding your record on Monday. Or, hey man, that last, you know, record deal you went through and it fell through, but you still came out and played the show when it fell through and you didn't have to. We're going to be there for you. How many people said that? You were good to me. 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 Over and over again. I think with any business that you're in, do the right thing even if it's wrong. And I'd say I messed up sometimes. I didn't do the right thing every time, but try to do what God would do in those moments. And I think you're going to look back on it, even if it doesn't work the first time, the second time, the third, or the fourth time like I did. One of those times is going to hit, and you're going to see all the steps that you took in the right way come back and be like, wow, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
You reap what you sow is a law in the world, just like gravity is. It's not something that's up for debate. Right. You know, that's why, you know, if you're a believer, not believer, you call it karma. But you recognize it as a law that's real and it's true and it's effective. And so I love that if you're not in a season of reaping, you are in a season of sowing. And so be so intentional of like you were, of like, man, I'm just going to do this, even though there's nothing in it for me right now. There's no immediate kind of transactional thing. You're a good man.
Oh man.
Love you, bro.
Y'all are good people. I appreciate the conversation.
What I can tell you, as long as I've known you, the gospel of Jesus Christ lives out in your everyday life. It lives out in your music, and it lives out in your live shows. And I'm just excited that God is opening up more people to the message.
Lampstand, baby.
Of Drew Baldridge,
Make me cry. I love y'all.
I love you.
Appreciate you guys.
Love you.
Guys, it's not about the number ones. It's about the number one. If you're looking to find your people, you're looking to get connected. If you're new to town and trying to figure out who you can spend some time with, go to thebelievers.life. We would be more than proud and honored to be your people.